This video explains how to draw strings in C# Windows programming, and also it explains how to pick appropriate fonts. Here is what we cover in this video. First, I define fonts and talk about font size and how to create a new font in Windows for applications, and also font styles. Then I cover the way to draw strings and format them in Windows programming. Let's begin by defining a font. A font is an instance of the system.drawing.font class, and it includes the following. It includes a family, it includes a style, and a size. What is a family? A family of a font is an instance of the font family, and it contains a group of typefaces that are only different by style. What is a typeface? Typeface is a name collection of drawing strokes that make up the outline of the character. And usually when we see a name for a font in most of the programs, that's basically is the name of the typeface for that font. Let's see an example of a font. Consider the typeface Arial, and basically Arial is the font family name. Let's say Arial font family contains Arial regular and Arial bold. Basically, bold and regular would be two different styles, and the size can be represented as let's say 12 points or 14 points or 16 points. So a font can be 12-point Arial bold. Font can be measured in several sizes other than points. You can measure the font size using pixels measurement unit or EMS or other design units. A single point is 1/72 inches, and also you can say 1 inch is 25.4 millimeter. These conversion ratios are completely independent of the device. These are not depending on any device, but pixel, which is another measurement unit for font size, is machine dependent, is device dependent. A pixel is a point of light on a screen or a point of ink on a printer. Pixels are often packed into inches for measurement because they are super small. For example, the resolution of a video display adapter or a printer can be, let's say, 100 dpi. What does dpi means? dpi means dot per inch. So assuming that you have a device with a resolution of 72 dpi, that means every 72 points on this device is equal to 1 inch. Or for example, if you have a 300 dpi printer, that means every 300 point of inks on that printer is equal to 1 inch. So let's see an example of the font size. Imagine you have a font of size equal to 12 points, okay? And you want to display it on a monitor with the DPI of 96. I should say it a more precise way. I should say the vertical DPI is 96. Now you may say, what's the difference between vertical and horizontal DPI? Or as it's mentioned in the graphics class, graphics.dpi-y and graphics.dpi-x. The pixel, the single pixel that you can find on a monitor might have a different height than the width, right? So it might have a certain height and certain width. The height and width might not be the same, so that's why we need to have like two different DPIs. One is DPI along the y-axis, one is DPI along the x-axis. If I want to basically illustrate what DPI is, you can think of it like this. Imagine you have a sequence of 96 pixels sitting on top of each other in a display that has a DPI y of 96. So when you place 96 of them on top of each other, the height of this tower that you build is going to be equal to 1 inch, right? Which is going to be equal to 72 points, right? So that's what DPI-Y means. Now, let's say using DPI-Y and using the size in points, we want to find out how high is a pixel, or I'm sorry, how high a character is in a font with size equal to 12 points. So we want to know how many pixels high a single character is in this setting. What we can do is we first convert points, which is 12, to inches by dividing it by 72, right? That's basically the height of a single character in this font. And then what we can do is we can multiply this by the DPI-Y, which is 96, and the answer would be 16. And that basically is the number of pixels that construct the height of a single character in this font. Here is the font class and the list of all its properties and methods. You can see different properties like the style, or strikeout, or italic, or bold, or let's say font family, and there are, other properties and methods that you can see for yourself. You can create a font object by specifying at least two properties. One is the typeface name, and the other one is the size. For example, let's create a font with typeface name Arial and the size 12. The size by default is in points. If you want to have a different measurement unit for the font size, you can basically use an overload of the font constructor that takes a value from the graphics unit enumeration. So remember this graphics unit enumeration. If you want to, let's say, specify the size in pixels or in other measurement units. Now, if you specify a font that is not available and you try to create it, then you get an instance of Microsoft Sans Serif font in whatever size you have specified. Here you can see the graphics unit enum and all the items that are in there. And here is an example of using graphics unit enum when you're creating a new font. For example, this font 1 is equal to an Arial font with the size equal to 12 points, because I use graphics unit.point as its last input parameter. Then the next one is the same typeface, but the size is 16 pixels. If we assume the DPI is 96, that 12 points and 16 pixels are the same, as I showed you a few slides ago, then you can basically use graphics units.inch and define another font with the size equal to 0.1666667, and basically this font will have the same size as the previous two, because if you divide 12 points by 72, you get to this number, 1/6 basically. And you can also specify the same exact font with the same exact font size using 50 and graphics unit document, or 4.2333 using the graphics unit millimeter. When you're selecting a font, you can specify the style by default the style is regular, but you can select another style, and that style can be made by using a combination of the items specified in this enum font style. You have regular, which is default, that's 0, the bold, the italic, the underline, strikeout. Basically, the font style would be an integer. The rightmost bit is going to be bold bit, because either bold or it's not, right? It's a Boolean. The second bit would be the italic one. The third bit would be the underline, and the last bit, the fourth bit, is going to be the strikeout. If it's 1, it is a strikeout. If it's not 1, if it's 0, if it's not, then it's not a strikeout. Same as like this bit. If this bit is say 1, it's going to be underlined. So if I have 1 here, 0 here, 1 here, and 0 here, that means this is a bold underline font. Here is how you can create a new font with a certain style. For example, I created Arial 12, and the style would be a bold italic one. So I basically do a bitwise OR between bold and italic from the font size enum, I should say. And sometimes you have already a font, but you don't like its font style. You want to change that. So that's possible by using this constructor. Let's say new font, the font is this first parameter, the base font that you have, but you don't like its font style. And then as a second parameter, you pass a different style. For example, you say font style the bold, or let's say font style the italic. Now that we have talked about a font and you know what font is, let's see how to draw a string. We basically use the method draw a string, which takes at minimum 4 values. The first one is the string that you want to draw. Second one, a font from the font class, a font object from a font class. Third one is a brush to fill in the font characters, and finally a single point. Here's an example of drawing a string. We basically create a font, let's say the font Arial and 12, and then we use the graphics draw a string method to draw a string. In the first line we have line 1, and then a new line, and the second line we have line 2. We pass the font instance object to it, and then we have the brush brushes the black, and then I have the point which specifies the starting point, which is 10 and 10, right? Now, draw string starts at drawing the first character at the same point that you specify, and then it keeps going until it hits the edges of the region at the graphics object. Now, if you want to have wrapping for your text drawing customized, you need to specify the layout of a rectangle and pass this rectangle as the last parameter of your draw string method. For example, I'm drawing a string with this text, a long string, and because it's a long string, I care about my the wrapping. So I basically after passing font and the brush, I basically pass the rectangle that I want the drawString method to use for wrapping purposes. And that would be this client rectangle. That's how you basically wrap a very long string. If you want to turn off wrapping or do some other type of formatting when you're drawing a string, you can use an instance of a string format class. Here you can see a list of properties for this class. And also here is the list of methods for the same class. Now let's see an application of it. Let's say you want to turn off the auto wrapping, as I said before. You need to first create an instance of this string format class, and then let's say pass a parameter to its constructor. For example, set its string format flags to no wrap. And then what you can do is you can pass this format as one of the parameters, input parameters of the draw string when you're drawing something, and that will basically turn off the auto wrapping for the draw string method. The string format flags is an enumerator that contains more options. You can check out the options. One of them was no wrap that I showed you before, but we have no clip, line limits, no font fallback, display format control, and more, that you can definitely use them in a similar fashion as I use the no wrap for you.